Welcome to Founder Radio. I'm your host, Hugo. In this podcast, you'll hear in-depth conversations with the globe's most exciting company founders. We'll talk about their ideas, their successes, their challenges, and their learnings along the way. At Founder Radio, we celebrate founders. And we believe that innovative founders are critical to deal with the challenges humans face. They are society's explorers and work in uncertainty to expand our practical knowledge each and every day. Building something from scratch requires creativity, intelligence, conviction, and endurance. Get inspired and learn from those that are changing the world. Hey everyone, welcome to Founder Radio. Great to have you back. Today we're diving deep into the world of LLMs with Joel Hodgson. He's the founder of Trubrics. If you like what you're hearing and want to get updated on new episodes automatically, please click follow this podcast on Apple, Google, Spotify, or YouTube. Hey Joel, it's great to have you. Welcome, how are you?
Hey Hugo, yeah, all good, thanks. Thank you very much for having me on.
Great. You're the founder of Trubrics. You're enabling AI product teams to build user-centric AI products. You do that by tracking all the actions inside the LLM. We're going to speak much more about that. You worked at Dyson and at Selden as an account executive. They do machine learning deployment and ML ops. And you started your first business as a 13-year-old. So I'm looking forward to hearing much more about that as well. You're an engineer by training. Welcome again, and let's get started. I'd love to get into more detail about what Trubrics does. Could you elaborate on what Trubrics offers its customers?
Yeah, definitely. So, as you mentioned, Trubrics is a product analytics platform for AI agents or LLM applications. So, I'm sure you've perhaps heard of a tool called ChatGPT. But yeah, so in November 2022, ChatGPT was released, and that really changed the world around AI. So what ChatGPT realized was people were able to interact with AI model via natural language and text. So they're able to actually use their text speak to be able to command some sort of AI system to get a response back. So tools like ChatGPT, they're powered by LLMs for the users. For people who don't know what that is, that's a large language model, where it's essentially a AI model which takes some text in, does a transformation and provides text back. What that means is we've been able to really transform how we can interact with the digital world, because over the last 20 years, people have interacted via computer systems through graphical user interfaces. So point and clicks around an application, going through a predefined workflow to be able to command and get an action out of that application. What LLMs have enabled is language user interfaces. So being able to go to an application and discuss exactly what you want to get the command coming back to it. So the applications of this are fairly endless. There's travel companies that now have text-based travel planners where people can come on, say, I want to go on holiday to Spain for a week. The agent will then understand what the user's asking, go away and book that, and make the action back to the user. Similarly, there's AI recruitment platforms or AI fund managers and so on and so on. So this is all great. This whole new world of possibilities around large language models and AI agents. However, what it means is product teams, so the people that are building these applications, no longer have any understanding of how their users are engaging with these products. And that's because the world's gone from this predefined workflow where you have the user goes through step A, they do a search in a platform, they click on a few buttons, they then book their holiday. Now to everything is text and language based, where the user can input absolutely anything they desire. And as well, for better or for worse, the AI model can do whatever it may want as well. So it's really hard to actually understand, okay, how are users engaging with this product, and what is the AI or the LLM actually doing in the background to fulfill this user's request.
What's your vision for the company? Like say 10 years from now, where do you want to be?
Yeah, so I guess in 10 years, what we're doing is currently we're building out product analytics for these large language models. So to really enable product teams to understand how their users are engaging with these AI models. What we're looking to do in 10 years is expand that out across the whole of AI. LLMs is just a small part of the AI umbrella. And essentially, we want to enable AI that serves humanity rather than the other way around. So We need to really be focusing on, okay, what's the value people are actually getting out of these AI models, and how can we better serve the users through AI, rather than just focusing on making the AI more and more powerful, focusing on the value to the end user.
Cool. Makes a lot of sense. And obviously there's this big revolution going on. Equally, artificial intelligence has had a gestation period of 40, 50 years. What's your take on the recent acceleration? Like, what's caused it, and where does the artificial intelligence technology and also market go to, you reckon, in the next 10 years?
Yeah, I think what's been interesting is, so prior to the sort of large language models being released over the last few years, the 10 years or so before that were very focused around machine learning models, where they're more traditional algorithms which are pre-trained on a data set to be able to do some sort of classification or regression. What's been interesting, what's changed over the last couple of years is, with large language models, we now have models as a service. And what this means is a company like OpenAI or Mistral or Cohere or one of the other large language model providers, they are building these models themselves internally and then hosting them as a service for other software companies or engineers to be able to communicate to and get responses back from this text-based model. What that means is the actual overhead to get started, or the barrier to entry to get started using AI, has been massively lowered. Before these LLMs as a service, when you were implementing traditional machine learning, as a company, you'd need data engineers to be cleaning up on your data scientists to train the model, machine learning engineers to get that into production and then monitoring, as well as all of the other software engineers to go around that, and product teams to actually build this machine learning product. So there was a huge amount of skill sets and teams that you needed to be able to implement AI or machine learning previously, as well as all the costs associated with that, with building and training the models themselves. Whereas now, these LLMs as a service has really lowered the barrier to entry, which means everyone is able to very easily, even just like a software engineer with no data science experience, can implement AI into a product. And yeah, this has meant that the adoption of AI has massively increased very drastically, and I think it will continue to increase and do so. But what this really means is we're now shifting from a developer-led approach to machine learning to a product-led approach, which, and going back to Trubrics and what we're building, is why our focus is really around product analytics. So instead of now focusing on how technically well is a model performing, we want to focus on how well is the model serving the user, and what's the end value of the user, how can we make it a better experience for the user themselves.
What key metrics are you tracking as Trubrics?
There's a few different things. First of all, I guess Trubrics as a whole, our approach is providing a completely holistic product analytics platform for LLMs. And by that, we mean we do all of the traditional product analytics that tools like Mixpanel or Amplitude or these other well-known product analytics platforms do, as well as the LLM product analytics. That's generally because LLMs are still hosted within an application, so we still need to be tracking other actions around that app. So some of the key metrics that we're tracking are things such as conversion funnels, as well as user retention. So for the use case of an AI travel assistant, so some of the airlines have these LLM travel assistants where you're able to, as mentioned, go on, search for your ideal holiday via natural language. The model will provide some recommendations or packages back, and then the user may or may not then book that holiday. So we're able to now track all of the events along this funnel via natural language, as well as all of the actions within the application, to be able to track, okay, how many of our users signed into the platform, how many prompted the AI agent, how many of those actually got a travel package recommended back, and then how many people responded, or how many of those people actually booked the holiday. We can then look to start breaking that down by the type of user, maybe the location of the holiday somebody was talking about, or the type of holiday, as well as things such as the type of LLM that they were using in the background, to really enable product teams to identify, okay, this is the conversion funnel. How does this conversion look when we're using GPT-4 compared to now just released yesterday, Llama 3? And where are certain areas that we can actually improve this conversion for the users?
Got it.
So these are some of the types of metrics we're pulling up.
How do product teams do that nowadays? Do they track everything outside of the LLM? The LLM's a black box?
Yes, if that, I'd say. It's surprisingly, a lot of the companies that we speak to, they're not even tracking any of these events at all. Traditionally, as mentioned, the other product analytics tools like Mixpanel or Amplitude, the more software-focused or traditional application-focused product analytics tools, they're built to analyze user behavior through page views and button clicks and not through all this natural language. So at the minute, current teams or AI product teams that are building out these AI-driven applications, if anything, they're using those previous tools or trying to hack them together, be able to track some of these LLM actions. But typically, people are, if a tool, manually storing prompts and generations and then manually reading transcripts to see where things might have gone wrong.
Oh, wow. Super interesting. And then a huge opportunity, I imagine. Joel, what was first, the idea for Trubrics or your co-founder?
Definitely my co-founder. Mm-hmm. So my co-founder, Jeff, we originally met at university. So we both studied an engineering master's together in the UK. We were great friends at university. It's an interesting story, actually. So we had some crazy startup ideas when at university as well. So spent some time discussing some potential businesses there. One of which actually, so I'll go into some detail. There's a company that we wanted to start called The Hatch. Mm-hmm. And The Hatch was, it was, do you know what like a dark kitchen is now?
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
Yeah. So it was almost like this dark kitchen business before dark kitchens were a thing. So we had this idea where essentially we wanted to set up like this network of dark kitchens, which were all robotics based because we were doing a very robotics focused degree. So all these automated dark kitchens, and then like an ATM, you'd have a hole in the wall where you could go up to the ATM, choose what you wanted, almost like a vending machine. And then this dark kitchen below would create this meal and then present it for you through the hole in the wall. And it was sort of just at the time that things like Deliveroo and Just Eat were getting started. So, we then were having the ideas of, okay, maybe then the Deliveroo drivers could be coming to collect them for you and so on. But
I like it. It takes a matter of time. I've seen pizza machines and espresso and cappuccino machines already.
It was interesting though, because it was probably about 2 years before COVID and the pandemic. And then obviously this would have been a way to get your restaurant food without having that human interaction when everyone was locked down. So when we were in over the COVID time, we were gutted that we missed the opportunity to start The Hatch. But yeah.
And do you think this is the way it should go? So you start a company with a good friend and someone that's also excited about founding a company, or do you also think that the road of having an idea and then maybe joining a venture builder or something like that to find a co-founder could work as well?
I can't tell you on the other way around because obviously I haven't experienced that. But yeah, in terms of working with Jeff and working with somebody who's a very close friend before starting business, I think, first of all, it was something which we were always keen to do. And as mentioned, we were exploring these businesses prior to starting Trubrics when at university. Things then fell into place and it worked out just naturally to, we both after university went into the AI industry. I was then working for an MLOps company selling machine learning software. Jeff was building machine learning software at a data consultancy. So we both had that relevant experience, both in the industry and complementary skill sets around commercial and technical. So things worked out there and it made sense to team up. But definitely, I mean, in terms of the day-to-day, it's very interesting working with a friend. And I always find it strange as well. Now, sort of if I get introduced to someone through Jeff, I'm referred to as his business partner. Mm-hmm. But then I'm thinking, actually, hang on, we were good mates before this, and now I'm your business partner.
You still are.
Exactly. But no,
it's not either or.
Yeah. But on a day-to-day, it means we have that prior relationship where we can challenge each other, but with respect. So if there's things which we don't agree with, we give each other the time of day to try and convince us otherwise. And we almost had this unwritten agreement of, okay, well, if you want to do something which I don't agree with, if you can convince me, then we'll go with that. So it really works there. And also we have that prior relationship so that we don't just have a big blowout argument over a disagreement. We want to maintain that relationship too. And it keeps us honest as well. If I see Jeff working hard and doing some extra hours in an evening, I'm then thinking, right, I need to put my ideas up and crack on as well.
Great. That sounds like a really good basis. And it sounds like you've explored a lot of ideas, maybe on your own, but maybe also with Jeff. How did you prioritize and eventually land on the idea for Trubrics?
Mm-hmm. So what we both realized was every data science team that we were working with, and it didn't matter if they were, in financial services, insurance, automotive, or so on, they all had this same challenge where they'd spent all of this time and money developing these machine learning models, getting the infrastructure in place to get them into production. And then once they were live, they just had no understanding of how these machine learning models were being used. So we started Trubrics probably about 2 years ago to try and solve this problem. First of all, I guess to really enable data science teams to understand how their machine learning models are being used and also build trust within the organization as well. Because there was a big problem then around, okay, I was working with an insurance company. They were building these models for the actuaries to better price insurance policies. And the actuaries had been in insurance 20 years. I don't need this piece of software to tell me what to do. I don't know what AI or machine learning is, so I'm not going to trust it and I'm not going to use it. So it was interesting because 2 years ago, Trubrics was completely different to what it is now. We had this whole system set up around getting feedback from the end user about a machine learning model and then trying to build unit tests based off that feedback.
So almost survey-based.
Yeah, almost like it incorporating their domain expertise into some unit tests to then test the model. We ran with that for 6 months or so. And then it was sort of getting some traction, but not really. The validations or the tests weren't really picking up. The feedback was an interesting area too. So we decided to just drop the testing and focus on feedback. So then we were doing this sort of feedback tool for machine learning. And then, as I mentioned, sort of 12 months in, ChatGPT was released and LLM started to take over. So then it made sense. We realized, okay, hang on, this actually makes this problem 10 times worse. So let's focus on large language models. And then we were doing a thumbs up, thumbs down feedback tool for large language models. And then after that, we then realized, okay, nobody actually leaves this feedback. We need to have better ways of measuring user engagements and realized that this really fits into the product analytics world. So I guess, my point here is there was never really a idea of this is the idea that we need to go with. It's sort of, we had this initial problem that we were working on and I think we still are. I'm sure we'll change again. We're iterating to the solution of where we need to get to. We're testing with the market, seeing what works, seeing what doesn't work. And
how do you think about, when you make these changes to the approach, to the business model, how do you think about, or how do you balance, I guess, brutal persistence versus learning and tweaking your model based on the feedback you get? Because you can't change the model every time you get feedback that points you in a different direction.
Yeah, definitely. I think so. There certainly is a balance. There's the whole saying around sort of work smarter, not harder. I'm sort of in two minds about that because I think you just need to do both, really. I think you have to grind it out, and if something's not working, you need to keep persisting for a good amount of time to see if things do work. So, we won't chop and change every quarter or maybe every 6 months at the fastest, but before we make those decisions to change, we do a lot of decisions, I guess, on gut, but that gut feeling has been accompanied by 6 months' work of hard graft to actually gather the knowledge that we need to be able to then make that gut decision, if that makes sense.
So is it also a matter of ruling out options in a certain direction? I can imagine if you've moved into a certain direction, say the testing part, there's a couple of ways of doing it. If you've tried all of those and none of them are working as you would want, that's the time to move. Is that part of your decision-making process?
Pretty much, yeah. I think as well, being in a software business, one of the things which I think we do really, really well is we release things quickly and then just test it with the markets and see if we can sell what we have and see if we're able to get users on board.
And Joel, in making these moves, do you seek advice outside of the company?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. When you start a business, you hear from lots of people that you need to be, speaking to everyone as possible, talking about your business all the time, to be gathering this feedback and advice from people that you're speaking to. I somewhat disagree with this. I think you need to be very careful around who you're talking to and who you're getting advice from, because it can be very distracting getting lots of different pieces of advice from lots of different people. Because first and foremost, what we're building is not a consumer product, it's a B2B SaaS product. So there's a limited number of people who are experts in that space that can give you proper, valuable advice. But also, even with the experts, the advice is always conflicting as well. So one person will tell you to do one thing and the other will tell you to do the other. And as you mentioned, you can't just keep chop and changing with every piece of feedback that you get. So it can leave you in a bit of a space where your head's scrambled because you've been told to do things one way and then somebody else is telling you to do other ways. So, which is why I think really when you're building out a business, you need to be, as mentioned, gathering as much information from the market. And by that, I mean from your potential users, not from advisors or people giving you business advice, to then gather enough information to make the gut decision yourself. It's not a bad thing. Everyone wants to help, which is good. Sometimes that help isn't helpful, unfortunately. But I think just on advisors as well, I've had a couple of really good advisors and pieces of advice from people too. I think you need to just understand what people are good at giving you advice for. So I had one person who was providing some advice when we were going through a fundraise. And I think probably one of the most important things about fundraising is being confident when you're pitching and presenting. And this advisor that we had, he had done various fundraising before and run his own businesses, so he had great experience. But what he was really good at was pretty much just boosting my confidence and making sure that every answer that I was giving, I believed in myself, because that's what was really important for fundraising. On the flip side, as well, you also need to take advice from the people who give you the advice that you don't want to hear. So I remember another guy who I'd spoken to, who I was connected through a friend and has his own business as well. He's further along the journey than we are. I was talking about Trubrics to him, saying that we're about to go for this big fundraise, wanted to raise however many millions, a huge amount. And he turned around and said, hang on, why are you fundraising? You've barely launched a product and you've got about 3 users. And I remember leaving that feeling pretty pissed off.
I hate this guy.
Exactly. Thinking, hang on, but this was my time to shine, my time to go out there. And then after a few days, I mulled over it and I thought, you know what, he's completely right. And spoke to Jeff and we changed tactics, focused on building out the company and the product for an extra 6 months. And then fundraised even then we fundraised a smaller amount than we wanted to before. And I think that's helped us really develop the company instead of develop your ego, I guess.
And I think it's really solid advice. And on the fundraising, I'm happy you bring it up. You just closed that financing round. Congratulations. Could you elaborate a bit more on what your approach was, what went well, what didn't go well, and what your takeaways are, and maybe also lessons for other founders that are about to start something similar?
Yeah. So first and foremost, I've spoken to lots of founders before who seem to hate fundraising. And I think for me, so I had prior sales experience being at Selden before. I was in enterprise sales for 4 or 5 years or so. And that basically helped me just manage the fundraise as a whole, like a sales process. I did my lead generation, reaching out to various investors, seeing who I'd get introductions to, as well as just cold outreach as well. Just messaging people on LinkedIn, submitting decks through portals. I then had my investor pipeline, managing that like a sales pipeline, different stages, all my notes and everything on where I think we are throughout the deal. And yeah, it was very structured around the process that I went through. I think the sales experience obviously gives you that experience of being able to handle the rejection as well. But no, I think it took us longer than expected, but I'd still say it's the easiest sales process you do because the investors actually want to speak to you and they actually have some money ready to spend. So, or hopefully, maybe not last year, but they do now this year. So that was my first take and learning. I think similarly as well, being able to constantly review the process like we do with the business and think, okay, where we're at, what do we need to change? What do we need to do differently? So when we first started, again, we were speaking to lots of VCs. We then realized, okay, actually, first of all, we're probably a bit too early to be raising from these VCs. We could raise from them, but we're going to give away a much bigger amount of our business than we want to, and it might take longer. So we decided to take a step back and focus on raising a smaller angel round first. And now we have a great support network of AI and SaaS industry experts that can give us technical advice, commercial advice, legal advice, and so on. And it also means that we can keep things really lean as well. So we're making a couple of hires, but we're keeping the team really small because we're still proving out the business and building the products and looking to get those first initial commercial customers. Instead of raising a huge round and then hiring a team of 10 or 20, which can take the focus away from what's important, which is finding product market fit.
And now this round is closed. Could you share any tactics in terms of the storytelling and in terms of getting investors excited about Trubrics?
One thing that works really well for us, which I'd recommend anyone doing, is building out a really detailed FAQs document. So after you've had a few conversations with investors, you'll know they all ask very similar questions all the time. And if you can just put that in a document and write out detailed answers for all of these, that really helps move things along and get people interested. What was interesting as well is for our FAQs document, so we were talking to a VC fund, we were getting reasonably far along, and then one stage in their process was their technical due diligence, which was them sending us a questionnaire. We filled out this about 15-page questionnaire of their DD, so I think we just did all their technical due diligence for them. And then I don't think they even opened it. I don't think they even looked at it. And so again, pretty cheesed off around that. But what we did was, that was obviously specific to that fund with some of the wording, but we then turned that into a general FAQs document. And I think that was probably the golden ticket for us actually then closing the round, because everyone that we spoke to afterwards, I do one intro call, send them the FAQs deck, and then they were pretty bought in.
Clever. You made time well spent anyway.
Well, yeah, we didn't want anything to go to waste, I guess.
Yep, makes sense. Awesome, and congrats again. Hey, Joel, I want to zoom out a little bit and focus a bit more on you. You've told us a lot about Trubrics and the market you're in. Let's go back in time, and could you tell us a bit more about your first business?
Yeah, definitely. So, I think what's been interesting is I've always been curious about two things. First of all, I guess this is what drives me underneath, but firstly, building things. So as a kid, I was always curious about how things worked and always wanted to create and build things myself. I think there's a funny story around that my auntie tells when I was a very small kid, probably about 6 or 7. She went to this hardware shop with me where the guy behind the desk obviously thought he was going to be serving my auntie. And then I was going around picking out resistors and light bulbs and wires and everything, and then buying them with my pocket money. So I was then going home and building all these circuits when I was probably about 6 or 7 years old. So that's one thing, sort of drive to build and create, which I think is why now I'm interested around building and creating a business. But that's also been tied in with, obviously, some drive around making money as well. And so when I was a kid, did the classic sort of, at school, I had a tuck shop where I was buying all these sweets from local supermarkets and then selling them on at school. But then I decided to then expand that into an online eBay business as well. When I was about 13, where I was buying from wholesalers phone cases, SD cards for like cameras, and then also new era snapback caps too. And yeah, it was great. I was learning lots about buying from wholesale and then sending it on. Funny story around that though as well was, I don't think my sources of the snapback caps were necessarily too legitimate. I didn't know, as a 13-year-old, I didn't quite understand copyright law, I don't think. So then, we started to get various letters through from New Era saying that we needed to cease the business. And the eBay account was actually through my dad's eBay account. So I think I got him.
I'm sure he was delighted.
Some trouble.
And what are your values when it comes to now running your business? What are sort of what's important pillars for you in terms of how you do this?
I think I've spoken a little bit around sort of taking the opportunities as they come and being comfortable, not necessarily being 100% certain, and being comfortable with the risk. Ultimately, quitting your job and starting a business is a massive risk, so you just need to be comfortable doing that. But tying that in with also making your own luck, or making your own these opportunities that come in front of you. So first of all, obviously working hard and putting the necessary time in to actually be able to build the business, but then also not being comfortable in one position and being comfortable to make changes and think what we can do differently or what we can do next. And then outside of the work, then just having fun as well. no point doing it if you're not enjoying yourself.
Amen. And when it comes to risk, are you one of those people that literally doesn't really feel it and is enjoying himself, or have you learned to cope with it or build in mitigations?
Firstly, maybe at a surface level, yeah, I don't necessarily think about the risks, or I'll happily take the risks, because again, I think that's part of the fun, just actually taking the risks, and part of the experience, and part of those, again, taking those opportunities as they come. My whole mindset when I started Trubrics as well was, well, worst comes to the worst, I do Trubrics for a year and then it doesn't work out, and then I can just get another job. Yes, I would have. I mean, there is the downside of I've spent a load of my hard-earned savings, but I don't really think about that. I'm more thinking about how I can recover from there anyway.
Bit of both, basically.
Bit of both, basically, yeah. But then, yeah, also around just, I think going back to that, making your own luck and making your own opportunities that come in front of you. So the risks that I made, they've been planned out and they've been measured as well. So before I started Trubrics, I had that plan. That's always been the plan. That's always been in the vision. So much so that, I was in discussion with Jeff, obviously, before we left our previous jobs. And I was tying in things like, so I was working in sales before, and I tied into the plan, okay, well, I need to make these deals to get X commissions, so then I can finance and source, so I can finance Trubrics for a year, to give me enough runway to actually prove the business out. So on the surface level, it's, taking these opportunities and risks, but also underneath that, it's tying everything in to actually make sure the opportunities come up, which then work out, and make sure that you're lucky in a sense, but there's been a lot of work that's gone into that luck in the background.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I was intrigued with what you said about creating your own luck. Obviously, planning ahead and starting a business, like taking that leap is a really great example. Are there other strategies or things that you deploy to make sure that you are in the right spot to get lucky, so to say? Again,
those two things around perseverance and then also not being comfortable too. So you mentioned at the start, prior to Selden, the MLOps company, I did 18 months as a part of my degree as an industrial placement at Dyson. So I was building robotic test rigs at Dyson, which was pretty cool work. And I've been offered a grad job at Dyson as well for when I finished my degree. I could go there, pretty good pay. Obviously, they're a very well-known engineering company and pretty prestige work that they're doing. And the easy option would have just been taking the grad job and going there, or at least giving it a go for a couple of years and seeing where it could take you. But I knew deep down it wasn't really what I wanted to do, and I wanted something else. I wanted something more, something a bit different. So I decided to look at what else was out there. I wanted to go into the AI industry. I wanted to go to startups. And so I was then pretty much just emailing every AI startup in London. Selden wasn't even hiring at the time. I actually first started at Selden as a summer intern. They didn't have an internship program. They weren't looking for interns. And I was just harassing
this guy just kept knocking on the door.
Exactly, until they gave in. So like that. And then I was then at Selden, and then after a few months, I managed to then go into a sales role there as well. I started as a solutions engineer. I then saw this opportunity come through, which a couple of the other sales guys weren't that interested in because it was a smaller company. So I said to my boss, would it be okay if I actually just run with this opportunity and try and sell something to them? And I didn't end up closing a deal with them, but I think he was impressed with how I handled the opportunity and then gave me a sales job. So I guess it's, being annoyingly persistent. The key.
I see a pattern emerging.
Yeah, exactly.
And Joel, I'm interested in the sales job you had in your learnings there. And I think for those that don't have that experience, it's obviously super important to be good in sales in a lot of different roles. Could you share a little bit about what you've learned and what you would recommend people to do to be successful in doing sales?
Yeah, I guess firstly, it's a difficult job. People that are not in sales or not in those client-facing roles, they can also give salespeople a hard rap as well, but they're doing a very difficult job. And so I think what's been beneficial for me is having a sort of engineering mindset within the sales world, where engineering is obviously very just focused around solving a problem and solving problems. And I take that same approach as to sales as well. It's just solving problems through people almost, where there's the end goal of making the sale. The whole role around sales is, okay, well, I need to first of all, especially enterprise software sales, but it's understanding, okay, what's the process on how do I get to that sale? And then how can I navigate through that process? And what are all the problems that come up? And how can I resolve those issues as well? Mm-hmm. And so I think focusing on it as a problem or a challenge to solve gave me a nice mindset where I then wasn't necessarily as worried about any knockbacks, and I didn't take too personally, people saying that they're not going ahead with a deal or not answering cold calls and that sort of thing, because it was just all part of the process. Looking at the bigger picture rather than the day-to-day tasks.
And what's on that roadmap typically? I can imagine understanding your customer needs, understanding your own organization. Mm-hmm. Are there other things that are, in your experience, on that roadmap that you plot out to get to your end goal?
Yeah, definitely. One of the most interesting learnings for me, I won't go into the whole roadmap, but one of the most interesting learnings for me was being an expert in your field. I'll caveat that with maybe at least just coming across as an expert in your field. But so I was selling MLOps before MLOps was really a thing. And I think what was really interesting there was the first and foremost part of the sales process was really having to just educate the industry, because people were having this problem, or they weren't even quite having this challenge yet, but they were going to. And so we had to go into these client meetings and really teach them with, I guess, past case studies or past examples. We had to teach them exactly what the challenges they were going to face were and why they needed to face them now. And so, I was doing some meetings with some chief data officers and heads of data science at some fairly large organizations. I was a year out of uni and they were screenshotting all my slides and that sort of thing. I thought it was just really interesting, because when you're selling, I guess, like a sort of leading edge technology, that information is new to everyone else. And after I realized, it almost helped get rid of any sort of imposter syndrome, where it's like, okay, because this technology is so new, nobody else knows it. So I am actually an expert in this field, because
relatively speaking,
because I've been thinking about it for like the last 6 months, where these other people haven't. Mm-hmm. Obviously there's people who are much more experts in the field than I am. But I think having that mindset and maybe not going in and hard selling, and more, first of all, going in to actually teach and educate, so then you can actually build the trust. So then people want to buy from you, rather than thinking, I'm just doing push to products, which I don't necessarily know what it does.
Yeah. And you mentioned the word confidence a couple of times, in terms of being able to cope with no's, being able to persist, being able to present yourself as an expert. What have you learned about managing your own confidence?
You always need to keep a positive mindset. I mean, especially when starting a business, because there's going to be times when you're questioning every life decision you've made, and questioning if this is the right thing or if you're completely going down the wrong path. But I think ultimately being able to take the positive angle and not go into this sort of mode of doom and gloom around, I'm not sure if this is right, and then you start questioning your decisions as well. You have to stay positive and have the positive outlook to be able to remain confident. And I think it's one thing that myself and Jeff do really well. It goes back to the piece that I was saying around the investor FAQs document. We could have been really annoyed about that. We could have been really hung up on it and just thrown it away. But instead, we looked at the positives. We then had this massive document, all this information, which we could turn into something positive and then reuse from there. And so, I think positivity and just rolling with the punches helps just maintain confidence, which is important.
Cool, I like that a lot. And you've evolved quite a bit in terms of the kind of roles you've done and the training you've received. As we said, you started off as an engineer, then more of a sales kind of role. Now you're leading Trubrics. How has that been for you, and what parts do you really love? What parts maybe less so?
I think firstly, apart from maybe the engineering when I was at Dyson, obviously Selden was a startup as well, and then Trubrics is a very early startup too. So there isn't necessarily any training. Everything that I've been doing is you just figure it out and learn it on the job. And I think that's what I really enjoy, just being faced with something which I have no idea how to do it, and just trying to figure it out and getting to that solution.
Oh. What people are you most influenced by?
In terms of like public people, I'm not particularly influenced by like famous people within the industry. I find it difficult to build like a connection with somebody that I don't know. So I'm not listening to Elon Musk's podcast and then living his life exactly. But I think I'm much more influenced by the people who are in my personal life directly. So friends and family is very, very important to me. And I think ultimately, being influenced by those friendships and those relationships there. I think as well in terms of just how I was brought up as well. I know when I was a kid, I was very inspired by my dad. Mm-hmm. So I was
in what way?
Keen to, I guess the way I was brought up, I was very lucky to have a very, well, first of all, privileged upbringing, but then also great parents who were able to support me and look after me and were always there for me. But then also looking at my dad, he did that and then was also very hardworking and very successful in his career as well. And I think that's one thing that drives me quite a bit to almost live a similar life to mm-hmm. what he did as well.
Mm-hmm. And in terms of your friends, are there any particular influences that have made you to who you are today?
I mean, Jeff, first of all, so a close friend who's a co-founder, but it's important I hear as well as also around, there's always this feedback around, surround your people with people who are going to accelerate you and be, they're more intelligent so that you're always accelerating yourself. But I sometimes think, why do you need such a take from your friendships? So I surround myself, first of all, with some very intelligent people, and they are very successful, but it's also going back to the piece around just having fun as well. I don't think everything needs to be around, okay, I have this friendship with this person to help me accelerate my career. I think it needs to be, I have this friendship with this person so I can share some happiness with them as well.
Absolutely. It's not all about acceleration.
Exactly, yeah.
Awesome. Thanks, Joel. It was really great talking to you. As we wrap up, do you have any last words, anything you want to share with the audience?
Yeah, I guess I'll caveat this whole conversation with just saying I'm by no means at success yet. So this is just like my way of thinking, and it's not, and like I said, going back, this is not my advice as well, because I don't want to be giving unsolicited advice on a podcast. But yeah, also I guess if you're thinking of starting a business or changing jobs or doing something differently, or you're just thinking that what if, then from my point of view, just go for it, because why not take the risk and see what happens?
Awesome. That's a really great note to end on. Thanks, Joel. It was great talking to you. Thanks for sharing all your experiences and learnings. I'm personally super excited about Trubrics, and we'll be rooting for you from the sidelines. Best of luck and talk to you soon.
So, thanks very much, Hugo.